Welcome back to Artificial Antics, where Rico and Mike will talk about the implications and opportunities around artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. In this episode titled Beyond the Buzz, The Real Cost of AI in Business, Rico and Mike share their experiences and insights on the expense, investment, and ROI of integrating AI technologies in the business sector.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another exciting episode of Artificial Antics. I am Rico, here with my co-host Mike. Mike, how you doing?
Doing really good, Rico. How about yourself tonight?
Not doing bad at all, man. I'm glad to have you back. I know you just went away out to Vegas for a little bit on a nice excursion for work.
Yeah, it was absolutely awesome. So we went out there for the NADA conference, which is the National Automotive Dealer Association conference. And I'll tell you what, this is the biggest conference, at least in the dealership world. And it was a great event. So I was there last year with our team as well. And our booth was better this year. We had a 10-foot tall LED screen.
Nice.
It was awesome. There were tons of people there. I feel at least there was 3-day event, and I feel like on day 1 and 2 it was just like we were constantly going, right? Like to the point where we had 3 simultaneous people running demos at the same time, just constantly, right? And so talked to a lot of people at the conference, and I'll tell you, so I went last January, and this January, AI is being talked about a lot more. So last year, for instance, we were talking about sentiment analysis and transcription, and they're both AI, right? But sentiment is a little bit deeper, where sentiment's kind of getting to the heart of how a conversation went, how
Right.
people are feeling during the conversation. Transcription is really just taking speech and turning it into text. And I will tell you that the latter part there, right, the speech into text is table stakes for dealers, right? They absolute and really anybody using our communication platform, phone system, messaging, and they want to see what was said, and they want to have that a text version of that, right? And
Right.
even something such as a voicemail, right, will transcribe, and actually it'll send you a message if you've gotten a voicemail, so you're able to get back to people. And so in our products, right, transcription is a must-have. And so last January it was a must-have, and sentiment was oh, is that AI? Right. it was okay. It's okay. It's all right. But yeah, it wasn't the thing that they needed nor really wanted. And it's the whole adage of, hey, sounds expensive. You know what I mean?
Right.
They didn't necessarily see the value in that, right? We're talking about different things. And so this year, there was a lot of buzz around a new CRM in the dealership world called Drive. It's not new. I guess they're a few years old, but they have some new offerings around in their CRM around AI lead gen. So this is lead generation.
Mhm.
And so, honestly, I couldn't go 100 feet without hearing somebody talking about this drive-centric CRM. And so I went over, talked to them. Great set of people, and yeah, they're really excited about their new offer. And they were telling me that part of it is sending out messages, but in a very let's call it intelligent way, artificially.
Right.
And then the second piece of it is actually having AI agents call, right, and warm up a lead, right? So you've got cold outbound leads where having somebody make those calls is half of them aren't even going to answer. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if you use an outsourced call center for this, maybe across the globe, it's expensive, right? It's 75 cents. I was talking to our CEO, and he said, yeah, it's around 75 cents per call just to see if there's a live answer and transfer it into the sales department, right? So with tools like Bland AI and other tools, like this drive-centric lead gen, and even stuff you could build that's custom to your business, I was looking at Bland, and it was 4 to 7 cents a call at the most, right? So there's a lot of cost savings there. It's probably not much worse or about the same as having some person in another country just press a button, right? I don't even know if they talk, right? They just somebody picked up, we press a button, we transfer it to sales. So
Right.
that was interesting. Trying to think of other things. Oh yeah, there was another company that we've talked to a bunch as well, and we were looking at some of their newer stuff. They're called CallRevu, and like REVU. And so they did a full demo. It was the third day, and it was kind of slow the third day. And so we were over talking to vendor partners and potential vendor partners. And they gave us a whole demo of their product. Oh my gosh, dude, the insights and stuff that they're providing with their product and AI insights, and like really what should be actioned upon, what doesn't need to be actioned upon, and getting that data quickly to the people who need it was fantastic. And I'm not even doing it justice, because like there are so many different things about, like how are people answering the phones, are they calling people back? Are they calling people back within a reasonable amount of time? And
Right.
and are they actually booking appointments, or are
Converting.
they just
Yep.
You're right, exactly, or are they just calling, right? And who's doing that and who's not, right? He was showing an example, and it's probably just a demo example, but one guy had 70 something calls, and 40 of them booked an appointment, and then the agent below that was like had around the same amount of calls but booked one appointment, right? There's clearly an issue there, and they have some coaching stuff built into the tools as well, right? To like say, hey, like, okay, this agent isn't really performing up to the standards, and here's why, right? Or here's at least a best guess as to why that's happening. So those type of insights I think are extremely valuable, and it's really about the trend that I saw at Clarity was being able to make quick and accurate decisions, right? Like that's
Right.
paramount, especially when we have so many things to do in our lives. So
Right. Now that sounds great, man. And it kind of segues right into what the episode is about. So for everybody out there listening, we are on our 9th episode, and this one's entitled Beyond the Buzz, the Real Cost of AI in Business. And as Mike said, we've kind of seen the progression from last spring to now. Between the early talks of it, everybody was hyped up. We saw generative art and chat GPT, with OpenAI and all that stuff kind of come to fruition. But what we're kind of measuring here in 2024, and I'm sure some businesses have already started doing this, is actually the costs that are involved with it, whether it's, purchasing the hardware or what it's going to save on employee costs. If they let some people go, they automate some processes, that type of stuff. So Mike and I were talking about this episode a couple of weeks ago and decided that, we should probably run some numbers here and actually throw some facts and figures out there for everybody in the audience. So it just works perfectly that Mike was just out, in Vegas talking to people in real time and can bring some of that buzz back, and has had some great conversations. So we can dive right in.
yeah, and I lost $100. So that was what I put on the. I did some slots, and I was with a coworker of mine. She won like $87.50. I lost $100. I was like, that's cool. We both put $100 in. It's all good. So,
It's very different from how I would gamble.
Yeah, I am not a gambler. I mean, it's one of those things where I think it's not my thing. It's not my jam. But I have said I'm in Vegas. I have to at least try, right? So
Right.
So that was fun. Great event overall. And like Rico said, we've been really talking and thinking about this topic, right, for a few weeks. One of the things that stemmed this in my mind, right, is I was looking at Microsoft's Copilot, right? So they have Copilot in Bing, and that's free, and it's great, but like you're not able to like connect that directly into your Office 365 instance and, talk to a spreadsheet, right? Like thinking of an example, trying to get some insights from on sales from having all your sales data, already there in the Excel spreadsheet. You can't do stuff like that without Copilot, or you could definitely do it, but like Copilot's a way to do it very easily while you're still in the Office 365 suite. And I was looking at what it would cost. So I think for enterprise, so it's $30 a seat to add it. And I think for enterprise, that's, like a no-brainer that you would want to have it at least on some of your staff, right? The ones that would use it. And then for small businesses, though, you right now it's not even available. You need to have an enterprise license. I look all the time to see if it's available for us, and it's not yet. And we're a 70 person, we're 70 people, 70 Microsoft seats, and so we have to go up to 300 just to get the features. And I was looking at the cost of what it would be to go up to the 300 and also include those seats. It was like $11,500 per month, right?
Wow.
Which isn't feasible, really. I mean, if
for
you're
most small businesses,
for most small businesses, at least not for that one thing. You know what I mean? Just remember, that's only one thing, right? That's one AI thing,
right?
And or one AI service. And so, as folks are, considering, hey, like, gosh, there's a lot of hype here. AI is really cool, but I was talking to Dave George. He's an entrepreneur, CEO of a bunch of companies and a bunch of past companies, and great guy. He's actually going to be on the show next month, and he was saying, he talks to CEOs all the time, and they're like, gosh, yeah, it's really great, but I have no idea what we're going to do with it, right? Like in our in our business. And Dave was saying that with their customers, at least at his consulting company, what they do is they pilot stuff and sort of do a bunch of research internally and start using these tools internally. Like one for instance, might be like Otter AI, right? And Rico, you and I have used that, right?
Yes,
Where
yep.
That's going to transcribe. It's going to give you summaries of your video calls. And I do use it all the time. There's also an option called Fireflies AI, right? So they'll do stuff like determine which one's better, which one they think is going to provide more value to their customers and them internally. And they'll like pilot it for a while, right? I guess one big thing that I would say about this stuff in general is like, you don't want to miss the boat, but you also don't want to dive in before the boat arrives. So you have to be very careful to not jump onto something and just, like I said, like add recurring revenue or a recurring payable, from your company that, you're letting a lot of water out of the bucket, let's say, right? In a business there, is it going to provide you the value to drive additional revenue in? That's why I think lead gen is really hot, right? Because what's happening, I think, is people just don't have enough people to do lead gen properly, right? And it can be expensive to get these people, and plus cold callers, like how many people do you know that love cold calling, right? They're out there.
Right. Yeah, few and far between though. And to be actually good at it, that's the other thing.
Yes, exactly. But then, you do think of what does a lead cost? Well, they're damn expensive, right? Like, and these dealers know exactly how much a lead costs them, right? So you don't just want to flush it down the toilet, right? So, by sending AI out and saying, all right, AI, just do the thing. There's a balance, and you need to determine that the tools that you're using, because there are a bunch of them, right, are proven. That's all it is, are proven. And so that's something that I'm going to be looking into more. Rico, I showed you the call center coach that I made
Yes.
as a custom GPT. And I was talking to, so this is for our support department. I was talking to our sales director as well and saying, hey, we could basically do the same type of coach thing for sales, right? Like, so they get on these cold calls. We have all the recordings, right? We could take the recordings, we could assess, we could coach, we could determine, did they do the things? Did they not do the things, right? And we could even determine, like, was this really a warm lead, right? Like when it was handed off. So,
Right.
And obviously, there's a human touch to that, and you have to validate during the training. They call it kind of fine tuning, right? You want to fine tune things and ensure that it's correct. But, I'm sure it probably gets you most of the way there. Like all the stuff that we see, Rico, is like, it's going to get you probably most of the way there. That you have to have good inputs, which means you have to make a really good custom GPT. Those are the inputs. And then the outputs, when people are using it, they're gonna we're determining whether or not the outputs are good by folks like head of support verifying that like the quality assurance output that was generated by call center coach actually makes sense, right? Like, did it hit the mark? Did it miss the mark, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we talk about too, the other thing with that is that it's also AI police, right? It's getting good data from the executables, what people are out there making these calls and stuff, but it's added pressure to the humans that are making the calls, and if they're being judged based on sentiment analysis or the other things that the AI does, we're back to AI policing again, which obviously have mixed feelings. And I see the business benefit to it, being able to analyze that data quickly and, have, let's say, for instance, we talked about having a thermometer on it, like literally seeing, okay, it's this temperature because, this is how well that call went versus a call that didn't go well, would be a colder temperature on the bar, on a graphic scale or whatever. But yeah, I could definitely see the benefit to it. And, as a business owner, that's what you want. You want the most efficient way, but how many people are going to want to endure that as well?
Yeah. You don't want to be you don't want to be a meat grinder, right? That's a really good point, and I'm glad thanks for being the creative skeptic. Mikey, just go. And I'm like, all right, let's go ahead. And it's funny because the first time I showed the call center coach, the people who were heading up support really loved it, and somebody that wasn't a head of a team was like, oh, that's really Big Brother. And I'm like,
exactly.
It is. It is Big Brother. I mean, that's the reality of it. So there's 100% of balance. And that reminded me just now of something else that I saw at NEDA that was trending on LinkedIn is the tag, the human side of AI, right? Because there always needs to be a human side of it, right? These are tools that are augmenting us. So again, to your point, we're not just going to let this thing run the rails, and there's a human touch, right? And like you could not coerce, but like you could build the call center coach to be friendly about its output, which the one that I built is actually really nice. It's like, this person did this. They were really pretty good. They could use a little bit here, but
like a
it was
coach.
It was very gentle. Yeah, it was very gentle. And I think that my prompt there, at least part of the instructions, was to be a helpful assistant. I think I may have even said with high emotional intelligence, right? Because that's a huge thing. And, we're not looking to, just destroy people's, not their egos, but just destroy their motivation because, they're like you said, they feel like they're in a meat grinder and under a microscope, right? Which people function completely differently. I forgot what what the phenomena is or whatever, but
we were just talking about that like a month ago.
Exactly. They function differently when they know they're being acutely observed or even just observed, right? They're gonna maybe not take some of the liberties, and some of those liberties may seem unconventional, but they might actually get the job done and be completely within like the parameters of what is acceptable. So, you may never get that organic conversation if they are, and this doesn't encourage using like being completely scripted either. Like I've talked to our sales director, I've talked to some other people, and, I think like being completely scripted is like the total antithesis of what you want to do in sales, right? You need to be watching, seeing what, like letting the customer guide you, really asking a lot more questions, listening.
What do they need?
What do they need? Right. Like, when we were in the booth, I was one of the people doing demos, and I had a lot of customer conversations, and, we were trying to talk to them and ask them about their pain points and listen, and then really only tell them the things that were going to solve their pain points and, give them a high level overview. People don't want to go into the weeds. They don't want you to bring a phone over and show them exactly, what it is. These are people who run dealerships. They don't want to, they own dealerships and run dealerships. They really don't want to deal with the phones. They want to just use
be nimble,
phones, right? They want, then they just want to use the phones. And, it's kind of like the Apple thing. it just works, right? The stuff just works, right? A lot of good, just what stuff costs, how people can save money, but keeping it human, right? Like that human side of AI. So I thought that was great that people were jumping on that train, and I love that there are folks out there that somebody had to initially put in that human side of AI, and I'm pretty sure it's somebody that I'm an acquaintance with, and she's really great, and so. She's another one that I feel like is a candidate for the show, because she's doing a lot with AI lead gen, right, in business development in these dealerships. So I mean, I was just thinking too, Rico, something that you had said that I wasn't really even on my it was on my radar, but it wasn't on my radar tonight, was addressing the impact of AI on employment, right? So
human capital,
the human capital stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you want to talk on that a little bit, and because I know you had some ideas.
Sure. Yeah. So, one of the things I'll start with, and I mean, you're even working in tech as you do, full well that you have some employees that have greater strengths with computers and understanding of computers, and even basic, office suites, like literally Microsoft Office or 365,
Right.
And there are those people who can't for the life of them figure out how to make an Adobe PDF. Right. I mean, they exist. We all work alongside of them, and it's not to slight them or, go against them in the slightest, but that's the reality of where we're at. And, based on the conversation we had the other day, part of the costs that are going to be associated with this, one, you got to get the buy-in of the employees to say, okay, this is going to benefit us. And yes, it may cost a couple of jobs here or there, but what do we gain as a group overall to get that buy-in? And then there's the cost of actually bringing them up to speed on what the AI is capable of and how it's going to enhance them. And we all know, folks who are apprehensive about it just simply because it's technology, whether they're late in their career or they don't really have an affinity for computers and understanding them. We run into all sorts of folks. Training those folks, that's going to take some time, as well as the equipment and everything that goes into it. That's going to take time as well. So, we already know that there are folks that think that AI is going to be the end of us all. It's going to kick everybody out of a job. But you and I know very, very well from even doing simple things like generative art. Yes. It really takes the artist behind that's creating the prompt to get this output that is majestic by itself. And I see a lot of it on our Twitter page. Yep. Been very engaged with the AI art community. And what it really does is it underscores that little human element that AI doesn't come up with on its own. And maybe if a model is trained long enough over time, maybe you'll see it come out with it. But we're not there yet. Anyway.
We're not there yet, for sure. Yeah. And it's not just the the guy holding a pizza, the fun little bit that we get. Right. There's a lot of things that I see that you really have to know what you're doing on that input prompt. Like you'll get how's this? You'll get decent output, basic output that looks better than you could do, and most people can do on their own with a basic prompt. But where you really get that extraordinary and exceptional art is when somebody knows exactly what they're doing. It's
like a typical artist.
Like the typical artist. They know that, it's a wide angle shot. They know these different things. They know the aspect ratios. These are people that have been in the business for maybe 20, 30 years, and they know what the heck they're looking for. This is going to, obviously, it's a mix too, because they're probably taking pictures and making pictures. It doesn't mean that you can't stop doing what you originally did. It just means that maybe for certain cases, or if you want to, let's say, branch out, like Will.i.am, right? He was talking about, generative AI and how, he wants to just see how far it can take us, right? Like, it's great now, but like, let's see where we could go.
Right. And I can tell you from, that we did that little short film there, a week ago or whatever, that was easily over 200 iterations, 200 separate things trying to get it right. And the wording, dialing each one of those things in. And that's what you see with an artist, and any good artist. I knew one was an instructor of mine a few years back in college, and he talked about at the master's degree or the PhD level, whichever he had attained for art, they had to draw the same thing like 100 times for homework, and it had to be as close to it. And that's what we're now seeing in the digital arts scene, and with any of these tools. We've looked at the progression of Chat GPT from last year when we started using it, and we say each time when there's an update, you can tell, even if you haven't read about it yet, you can tell based on your output of what you get. You say, well, they've changed something because this is the type of prompt that I make and this is the output. So and I wouldn't say we're experts, right, but we're more experienced than most. So there's definitely some costs that will be associated with one, upgrading equipment to handle it, whatever those automations may be. That's going to cost, and chipsets nowadays, with NVIDIA and even AMD. NVIDIA is doing quite well as a stock because they're finding ways around US regulation to get these chipsets built in record time that are meeting the mark for all of these companies, including China, who need them in large servers and other things. So there's going to be some lag time there, some costs associated with getting the proper chipsets and upgrading equipment, as well as the training. So
for sure,
you kind of see like it becomes a greater problem than just, okay, we're going to start using this one program that does this one thing for us.
That is a heck of a thing too. I saw the notes on the regulatory landscape, right? And I will tell you what's interesting to me is like all that's being done out in the open. It's like when mom catches your hand in the cookie jar, but like this is like they don't even care. They're just like, hey, how's it going, mom? Boom, reach in the cookie jar with those new chips that are just under. And I know that the regulators are saying like, hey, you really want to get shut down? Like, we'll
it
make
might be
it
worth
so
the fine.
Right, exactly. And then an interesting thing that I think stems off of that too from China's side is that they're actually figuring out how to do this stuff themselves. I heard something on Last Week in AI. They were talking about how they're building this massive wafer chip, and I think it can go up to multiple thousand cores, right, in one processing unit, which is going to allow for a ton of concurrent processing, which AI does extremely, training AI models. It's extremely important to be able to do that, right? So, I think that, people aren't just going to bury their heads in the sand. They're going to do something about it, just like we would do something about it on our side. So, I think that there is really an importance to, of compliance and, being transparent, and, ethically using AI as well, right? And so there's a cost really even to regulation, right? So it's sort of like a cycle. It's cyclical, and one thing leads to another, then back to the other, right? Which reminds me of when I watched Oppenheimer. It's like the whole they're the effect and the effect and the effect and the effect, and it just implodes on itself. And so we will see that type of cycle happening more and more as we try to, because there's a cost to even think about the cost of transparency. Well, that means that you have to have people being very intentful and purposeful, which means you probably have to have more structure and even maybe a bigger team to pull something like that off. Whereas if you're sort of like, okay, this is just a black box, we trained it, it says some things, right? I love how the OpenAI engineers were like, we really don't know how it's coming up with these answers. It's like,
that's what people want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. It really adds a layer of trust for me when I think about it. And compliance, like think about complying with anything. I think about like PCI compliance or stuff we do for work. There's always a cost, right? Whether there's probably a human element, there's companies making money on it, right? Because they're like, okay, yeah, you are PCI compliant. All this stuff costs money, right? So, and it's not to scare people away from AI. It's really just to get the word out and the awareness that we have to be mindful about what we're doing, right? And you were talking about generative art, and that made me think about the Stable Diffusion, right? And actually using an open source model. It was called Focus, and that saved I downloaded it on my computer, got it all installed, and yes, it took a little bit of technical prowess. All things considered, though, it was pretty quick, and I was able to generate, any images I wanted, just with the energy that my computer would use, with generating these images. So companies should be thinking about not just using like the SaaS service. So I'd say OpenAI, you're pretty safe. But Rico, we've talked about, hey, are these companies even going to be in business next year, next month, right?
Yep.
As we start to get, more things catch on, and think about the things that we were even able to do now with custom GPTs that would have been a complete other service that you're paying $15 a month for, right?
Yes.
And it's not. You can just do it now. And I made that call center coach stuff MVP of that. I made that in an hour and 35 minutes. So consider what I could have done with more time, right? It's taking the barrier to entry. The barrier to entry is lower. I'd say the barrier to excellence, or the ceiling for excellence, is still pretty high, right? To really get it perfect, you are going to have to understand how to connect to other systems using what are called actions in custom GPTs. And so, for instance, going out, pulling a transcript, pulling a recording, right? And you do need a little bit of technical knowledge to really connect those things. But even the stuff you've built, right? You've built some stuff that was pretty impressive without even doing any of that. So,
right. Yeah. And, so there's a couple of things here. One, we talked to in our listener's voice this week about an educator that isn't really familiar with AI yet, or the applications in learning yet. So we were able to kind of address that, and we included that in this week's newsletter. But it really brought the point of what I like to do, for instance. I'm able to learn at a more rapid pace because the education is tailored to me, so I can ask questions, interact with it, and learn it faster. That being said, now it puts ideas in your head okay, I'm not Mike, I can't code, but I can use ChatGPT to learn coding, and I can learn it faster than I would have had I just been in, Udemy or Khan Academy or one of these other online, services that offer such things.
Absolutely. You know what? Hang on. So with that, I don't mean to cut you off, but you're right. I just had a thought there. So what you said there, you said faster than Khan Academy, faster than Udemy or whatever. I would actually push back a little bit against that. Here's what I think, how I think it should go, because I think about, you don't want to just be on your own, right? I feel like Khan Academy, Udemy, what they do is as long as the instructor's good, they put together a package, right? It really takes you end to end, whereas you wouldn't really even know where to start yourself. You wouldn't even know what questions to ask, right? You could probably get some basic stuff, but what I do see is, let's say, one subject of your Udemy course is related to technical API, integrations with LLMs. You could dig into that yourself more than the instructor does, and kind of understand it better. But you'd still have to understand that high level, okay, what's the next theme? What's the next piece that I'm doing, right?
Sure. But I'm just talking about from a point of efficiency and as far as, how people learn. So if you're a person that struggles sitting through, say, a 15, 20 minute, half hour class where they're just basically instructing, or, you have to read a chapter or something, not everybody strives there. So there's definitely a bit more efficiency. And you're right. You're not going to know all the right wording, just like what we've talked about with prompt engineering. If you're putting a prompt in there and you have no idea how to create a prompt or exactly what you want your output to be, whether it's an aspect ratio, which version of, say, Midjourney you want to use, that type of thing. But I'm just talking about, the efficiency overall, and what this does, not only in education, but the workplace and everywhere else, is that it will, get more efficient, outputs increase. So I think they say at a minimum, what they're seeing now is 20 to 30% increased output. for companies who are implementing AI. And I'm sure, well, in tech, for instance, you and I have talked about it. You've seen jobs that typically would take one of your programmers, coders, 4 days, and now they're doing it in 4 hours, right?
Yeah. And you know what? Yeah, you just reminded me about it with the whole learning thing. I did get a direct, let's call it testimonial from one of our our principal software engineer, and what he said was he was digging into a new technology to him. He knew what to ask it, but he took 2 days. He said this would have taken me at least 2 days to really learn this, and I learned what I needed to in 2 hours, and I have it fully implemented. So I was just thinking about the cost savings of AI there. Right now we're sort of flipping the coin. You just flip the coin, and it's like the amount of time that it saves, Rico, is just absolutely it can be I was talking to somebody and I was like, something that one of the things that's really annoying is creating web clients around, and I won't get too nerdy and technical, but web clients around these older APIs that are built in something called SOAP with XML. And what I figured out is that I could feed in this 6,000 line XML specification and have it build me a web API client or a Weber API client for it, and in minutes. That would have taken days. It could have been days to get that done. An early developer Mike or even mid developer Mike. And that's another thing that I showed our principal software engineer, and he was like, he knows the pain, right? He's done this for 20 something years like I have, and he's like, oh man, he's like, because it's such a grueling job to do that, right? And you may have to fix a few things, but generally it gets you 95% of the way, and you just have to fill in the blanks, right? And you could even use it to iterate and ask it to fix itself, the stuff that it created, right? Hey, this isn't quite right. And it'll do its best to take it to the next iteration. And sometimes it takes multiple iterations. It's still faster than doing it by hand, right?
Right. And that kind of segues perfectly into, one of the last things we want to talk to you on that subject as far as the benefits of business. I mean, we've talked about efficiency, increased decision-making, which is fantastic because it can go, pour over a lot of data and some very tedious work very quickly and give you some kind of output, like with your sentiment analysis GPT that you had created to assist with the call center.
Yes.
But the competitive advantage, and I think, we talked about this with Dave, was a matter of those who are going to be using these technologies versus those who aren't using them. And again, we all know old school businesses, especially in a place where I live, where you have folks that will still get out the typewriter because they refuse to learn how to feed labels into the printer. And it's a simple thing for most, but you have some that really they get stuck in that tech, that time, and they just don't want to move on from it. So we're going to see, obviously some costs, and that's going to shake out over time. There are going to be many people whose businesses they're going to have their feet held to the fire because the competitive advantages of companies who actually take the time to train their employees, pay for the tech, and get it in there, their output is going to increase, which is, fantastic. But that's going to come to a cost for a lot of businesses.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I 100% agree. And, as we start to wind down the episode here, one thing that I have kind of as my conclusion here, or an additional thing that I wanted to maybe dig into very lightly, but mention is, when I talked about the open source, using open source first, like a SaaS service, there is a hardware element to that with, so my computer, it's easy because I'm already using my desktop computer. But if you were, doing this in, let's say, a data center at a business, you would have to get servers or computers that had good GPUs that could run this stuff, right? So it's not just, so you save some money, it's CapEx versus, I think, OpEx or whatever it is, right? So you're going to spend more upfront for those, to utilize those open source solutions, and you will have a higher overhead. In the same breath, right, over time, especially when you pan it out over, a couple of years, and reducing the risk, right? To your point about, hey, these companies might not even be there in 3 months. You have to weigh that all together. And I think that's an important point that, especially like business tech leaders need to understand and operate by, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you look at the time from which, we formed our business and the ideas that we had with the rose tinted glasses, right?
Yes.
We've had to pivot, and we're going to have to continually pivot to be nimble and actually be in this space. And that's what other people are going to have to see. We saw a lot of services that started last year that were startups that very quickly became just part of, say, a GPT or a custom GPT.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Unless you're NVIDIA and then you're selling the shovels, right? For the gold rush.
Yes.
So like they really like they're nothing. See, and that's why I love software, because hardware engineering, iteration and hardware engineering is so much longer than software engineering. So these are physical devices that have to change, and that doesn't change quickly. I mean, it changes quickly, but not as quick as software can, right? It's not as dynamic. So they're getting a server into the data center. Like, you're not going to overnight that on Amazon Prime, right? Like there's a lot to it. So
and on that point, with as far as things changing quickly, we talk about regulation, and that's another thing that it takes time for laws to catch up. And we saw a lot of the big names, Elon last year was talking about it, and you have some that just call for legislation now. But the reality is, I mean, we see the state of politics nowadays. Things are not happening quickly, and there may be some guardrails that aren't in place, before some events happen, and hopefully they're not catastrophic to us all. But that's the reality of it that people need to think about too when they're either creating businesses. You could be kind of regulated out of your business in a matter of months, as this stuff catches up. So I want to bring that point up because in 2024 you're going to see a lot more AI regulation than we saw in 23. It's just reality.
Good point. You just reminded me of so just to let folks know, if they haven't heard, we are putting out a weekly newsletter now. This is called our AI Bites newsletter, and one of the things that we're just about to release hot off the presses, Rico, is something that you found, which is pushing for more regulation on robocalls because of deepfake voices, right? And so thinking about that, it hit me hard because I come back from NADA and everybody's talking about AI assistance for lead gen, and I look at that and I'm like, well, dang, like that could totally stifle the opportunity of these lead gen things, right?
And that's not even a full week either, Mike.
Right.
It's not even a full week from the happening last week with the robocall that we covered in last AI Bites, and here we are less than a full week later. Bam.
Yeah, honestly, like that couldn't have been more timely. I'm so glad that you found that. And so to sign up for the newsletter, folks, you can just go to antics.tv, our normal site. We've got a form in there. You'll see the little pink subscribe button. You can just enter your email, hit subscribe. We aren't sending out spam. We're sending exactly one newsletter a week. And one of the feedback pieces that I got from somebody is, there's a lot going on. This helps me keep up, right? And that seems very generic, but somebody actually told me that. So, we're really curating this and trying to reduce the noise. So it's not noisy. We keep it very consistent week to week. Rico's got a section, I've got a section, and then there's some stuff that we repeat, like the AI tool of the week. So if you're interested in just getting the latest AI news without the filler, I would highly suggest that you sign up for the newsletter and follow us on the socials too, Rico. You want to talk about our socials and things we've been doing, and you've been doing a lot on Twitter, I know, or X.
Yes, I'm having a real good time on X. If anybody is on formerly Twitter space, x.com, we are at Antics Lab. So it's at Antics Lab, x.com. Go ahead and hit us up there. We post there daily throughout the day, interacting with a lot of people in the space, whether they're behind AI. There's even some investors that are on there, other companies, and then a lot of generative art we're seeing currently. So we like to interact with folks there. And we also post polls because we'd like to hear back from some of the listeners. And we've gained listeners this way, but we also want to hear what you have to say, because it's just as important that we talk to the person who is just dipping a toe into AI, all the way up to the CEO who is making decisions for the company for their AI moving forward. So please go ahead and jump on there, follow us, and we will follow you back. We'll interact with you as much as we possibly can. And one other thing on the as far as the AI Bites newsletter, Mike and I tend to get a little bit long-winded sometime when we write things out, because we're very passionate about the things that we're finding and bringing the best information to you, the listener or the viewer. So if you look at our site, you're going to see some more articles being kind of fleshed out there that don't fit fully in the newsletter, but you can hear from Mike and I individually as well as collectively. So
yeah, that's a really good point. And so, you know, if you've got, like, let's say Gmail, and it might cut it off, but there's always a button to show the full message. So that's something to keep an eye out for. And yeah, so I think we can wrap the show here. It's been great catching up, Rico. I'm glad to be back home. I will say that.
Good to have you back.
Yeah, thank you very much. And folks, we'll see you back in the lab soon.
See you, everyone.